Welcome to episode 374, Daniel Ek, the story of Spotify, 10 lessons. This is an outline of episode 374, lesson 1 to lesson 5. This is an outline of episode 374, lesson 6 to lesson 10. Lesson number 1, how the idea of Spotify was born.
They're ringing the bell, they're taking pictures, everybody's congratulating them. You're here because you wanted to do it differently. Why?
Well, I really think that when you look at our company, and when I started thinking about this, we started this company when I was 23 years old.
What were you thinking at the time?
Well, I mean, for me, as someone growing up in a suburb, working class suburb in Stockholm, I couldn't afford all the music. So back in 98, 99, I was really thinking about how I could get all that music and do it in a legal way while at the same time compensating the artists. And that's where the idea of Spotify came up. And
Lesson number 2, start small, start Sweden.
if I'm convinced about something. So, again, if you're going to tackle an industry with, big incumbents and, big hairy structures, as you would put it, I think the most important thing is have a lot of patience to begin with, and then secondly, choose an area where you think you can truly matter. Like what most people don't know about Spotify is that we actually started in Sweden, my home country. And what was interesting about that was the fact that the Swedish music market was really, really small to begin with, and it was basically non-existent after many, many years of piracy. Because again, we had that infrastructure where people could easily share stuff. So, we started in an area where it was not much to lose for the music industry to try it, and we quickly proved that. And we then went on to the rest of it. And in our case, it's quite famous now, but for us, it was obviously a big, big process of getting to the US, because that was the kind of big holdout for us. But we eventually convinced, again, by the strong results we had in Europe, that the model worked. So the record labels here in the US is like, okay, we're going to put you guys in the world's largest music market, where we did, in fact, have a lot to lose. And
Lesson number 3, see the solution and not see the problem. This is because of youth, and you see no pattern recognition.
But I think that's what kept me going, because I saw the solution. I didn't see the problems in the way. I think many people, as they get older and they get wiser, and the great benefit you guys have here is you're not kind of destroyed by this fact that you think the pattern recognition, what I call pattern recognition, you don't really have that. So instead you see, oh, well, this is not how I want it to work. So you actually go out and you seek a solution.
Lesson number 4, how Daniel Ek learned to build a team in elementary school.
To create a web page. And I said, that's not really that hard. And I kept telling people that. And so they're like, well, can you help me do it? So eventually I started doing that. And this is as I was pretty much in elementary school. What I realized is I did one, and I got a bit of money from it, and I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And I kept, doing more and more and more. And eventually what ended up happening is everyone that was pretty good at math, I taught how to program HTML, and all the ones that were really good at drawing, I taught Photoshop. So we ended up having, the whole class pretty much producing work, after school hours. And building web pages for people, and that was my first company.
Lesson number 5, labels to be squeezed out. There are 4 parties in the Spotify business models: the consumers, the artists, the labels, and the employees.
It will allow select artists to upload songs directly without record labels or distributors. If the feature is eventually put to scale, it could drastically change the business for artists who would not need to go through a label.
Lesson number 6, keep going until I succeed.
And if you're advising entrepreneurs here thinking about approaching a complicated industry, what's the best way to look at that? Because complicated industries tend to change slowly.
Sure. So I won't say that it hasn't been tough. I mean, it's been an enormous process. And I think, you know, people often ask me, like, what my trade is. You know, are you a genius? Are you a visionary? Are you all of those things? And I'd say, no, I'm not. Like, the one trait that I have is I have this itch, and I never, ever, ever give up, which means that I keep going until I succeed.
Lesson number 7, share as much information as possible.
Where we have virtual town halls where we every 2 Fridays, I depending on where I am in the world, stand up and kind of talk to the company about what. It's really been one of those things that we've always had across our company. We want to share as much information as possible. And even if you kind of look inside of Spotify, you'd find that like pretty much all of our metrics are available to everyone.
Lesson number 8, say no to almost everything.
So speaking of lessons, how about some of the dumbest things you've ever done as an entrepreneur or as a leader? So these guys don't make the same mistakes.
Well, you know, I've done a lot of mistakes. I've probably done every mistake in the book. But I think some of the more important lessons I've had actually is it's so easy to say yes to things because you think that as you know, the company kind of evolves, and even as you have more people, it's like, well, this sounds like a reasonable idea. Well, even if you in your head say this sounds like a reasonable idea, that means no. Unless you're dead sure that this is the one thing we should do, it's probably better to say no. So I'd say my dumbest mistake is just taking on too much, doing too much at the same time, which never ever works.
Lesson number 9, hire fast, fire fast.
Again, it's this notion that hire fast and fire fast. And I know this sounds incredibly tough, but in so many regards, as you meet people and you're working through these companies, like the life cycle of a company to go from 0 users to 10 million users, as we've seen the last couple of weeks with Vidi and SocialCam, and could be the matter of weeks. If you then don't have the right team in place, and you try to kind of learn as you go, and it also, you know, the team isn't optimized for what you're doing, it's never going to work. And especially not if you're a small company. Every single person needs to carry their weight, and then more. So, you know, again, I've in many cases, just because this is a nice person and, you know, they're doing all right, I've kind of given people too much slack. And that's a mistake that I've done so many times. And
Lesson number 10, Spotify is only in the 2nd innings.
So we're now like a decade into that journey. And I really just feel like we're in the 2nd inning. So while this is obviously a big day and I'm very proud of my employees, I really just feel like we're in the early days, not celebrating the end days as so many other companies are doing. What have you about streaming? It's easy to forget that just 3 years ago, even in the US, streaming wasn't really a thing. It was still downloading songs.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and leave your questions and comments below. Wishing everyone peace and prosperity.